The video game industry is dying. The quadruple A titan Ubisoft only made $2 billion last year. The line is going down. We're in the end game. Grab your love games and hold them tight. Let's hope you've been keeping a backlog. Otherwise, we're gonna have to venture into the dreaded outside soon. And there isn't an SPF high enough to protect me now. Oh. Wait. AAA games kinda suck now. Well, good riddance. AAA games used to be the cream of the crop, the cat's pajamas. They used to be great. These were the games pushing the boundary for what we believed gaming could be. AAA companies brought us the innovative gameplay of the first Assassin's Creed, the immersive depth of the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind, and the sheer fun and excitement that is blowing shit up with friends in Battlefield Bad Company 2. But now the same publishers and developers that brought us these incredible and unique experiences are releasing Skull and Bones, Starfield, and whatever the fuck EA's been doing. These companies stop giving a shit about innovation, creativity, and frankly, fun in general. Now they only want to do what's safe, because otherwise it will affect their bottom line. And from a business perspective, I get it. When a public company's revenue decreases, it affects the value of the company itself. When that line goes down, investors get scared and sell shares, which in turn makes the company lose even more money. This loss of revenue then leads to things like layoffs, cancellation of projects, and even more crunch for the devs. But playing it safe is not what brought these AAA companies success. It's not what made them great. The gaming industry itself is not dying. The AAA companies are. These enormous corporations rely too much on their pre-established IPs, which is where all their money goes. I mean, half of Bethesda Game Studios' releases are Skyrim. They don't take creative risks anymore. And if that's not bad enough, they charge $70 for a game in an unfinished state, expecting people to just accept it and wait for it to be fixed. But people are finally starting to see through the bullshit and give up on them. These publishers are at last getting their comeuppance for their risk-adverse laziness. With games like Palworld and Helldivers 2 exploding into popularity, it's clear that the video game industry is still going strong. People want unique experiences. They don't want to pay $70 for a worse version of a game they've played before. The average gamer is finally starting to see the value in games made by AA, single A, and indie teams. You don't have to spend $200 million on a game to make it good. In fact, that is a recipe for failure. The more money that is spent on a game, the more people need to buy it in order to make a profit, and therefore make the investment worth it. But appealing to the broadest audience requires pandering to the lowest common denominator, removing any kind of artistry or vision from the end product. This makes the game samey, boring, a waste of talent. So why do the production of these games cost so much? Have you seen the credits of a AAA game? They go on for like 40 minutes. There are a ton of people who work on these, and that work has to be paid for. Granted, most of the people listed probably aren't full-time employees and may only have a very small part in the creation, but these things add up. The development budget for a AAA game has to cover all the man-hours that go into design, programming, writing, art creation, playtesting, and sound, including music licensing. With the hyper-realistic graphics trend in modern AAA games, a huge chunk of the budget goes towards asset creation, or the art side. Considering the variance of each project, their goals, and the secrecy of these developers, it is nearly impossible to get any solid evidence on an actual number. But from what I've found, about 40 to 50% of the development budget of AAA games goes towards art creation, if not more. And with how some of these games play, I wouldn't doubt if most of the budget was spent on visual artists rather than the actual game design and testing. With development budgets being in the 9-figure range, a lot of money is being put into making sure a horse's shit is properly represented. But this is only the development costs. The real kicker is marketing. Most AAA publishers will shell out 100 to 250% of the development cost for marketing. So if a game costs $100 million to develop, they'll spend up to $250 million just on marketing. That's a lot of clams. Of course, this varies greatly depending on the game, but big franchises tend to have insane advertising costs like this. This is why a $100 million game can be considered a flop even when it nets the company $300 million. The marketing costs are insane and normally kept under wraps. That's why games cost so much to make. But do they need to cost that much. These AAA publishers have dug their own grave because of the precedents they've set. One on the consumer side, one on the investor side. It's a double precedent, a DP, if you will. On the consumer side of the DP, the publishers have set a precedent of visual realism, so each installment of a franchise needs to look more realistic than the last. This leads to much more money needing to be spent on asset creation, making the game much more expensive to make. The game's visuals also translate directly to advertising as well, which is where most of the money goes. You can only watch a trailer, after all. There's also a consumer side precedent of games being bigger and bigger, which can really inflate a budget, unless you make the game barren. The second side of the DP is the precedent set for the investors. These AAA companies are public, meaning they are on the stock market, so much of their money comes from investors. If the company has a good year and earns a lot of money, they need to earn even more money the next year, otherwise that line goes down. And that's bad news. So these companies put all their money into their top franchises because they know it's successful. It's safe. But these franchises haven't changed for a decade. This mentality leads to stagnation. Stagnation leads to rot, and the gamers are starting to smell it. I don't know if it's thanks to influencers' miraculously improved media literacy or something else, but the average gamer is starting to understand they've been fed slop for the past 10 years and are now moving on to better things. The end of COVID quarantining is also likely a major contributor to the decrease in sales. People are going outside and doing, honestly, more important things than playing video games. Either way, these publishers are spending more money on games, but less people are buying. And I am so glad. Players want unique and interesting experiences. Why pay for a game you've already played before? This is one of the reasons why games like Lethal Company, Palworld, and Helldivers 2 exploded into popularity. They provide a unique experience. Palworld is the most creatively bankrupt media product to shuffle its feet in the land of gaming, and yet it is more creative and innovative than anything Game Freak has made in the past 20 years. One of the saddest things is that these AAA publishers don't just release major franchises. They have plenty of other smaller games they send out. Ubisoft just released a new Prince of Persia game that went totally unnoticed because they put all of their quarterly marketing budget on Skull and Bones, and we all know how that turned out. That Prince of Persia game could be really good, but no one's going to play it because it's like Ubisoft doesn't want you to. They want you to pay $70 for a game you can't own, and is a worse version of a decade-old game that they themselves released. A similar situation happened with EA and Titanfall 2. I'm going to rant for a second. Titanfall 2 and Battlefield 1 were both published by EA. Titanfall 2 came out shortly after Battlefield 1. But much more of the advertising budget went to Battlefield 1 because it is established as a well-received franchise. But since Battlefield 1 released 1 week before Titanfall 2, people bought Battlefield 1 and either couldn't afford another new release, forgot about Titanfall, or didn't know it existed in the first place, which is the boat I was in. Titanfall 2 is one of the best first-person shooters ever made. It is so goddamn fun and has a really high skill ceiling, so there's plenty of replayability. Both the campaign and multiplayer are incredible. You can feel the passion that went into it, and yet EA fucked it. They released it 1 week after their biggest game of the year, and then had the fucking audacity to say that they sold fewer units than expected. Fuck you, EA. That's probably why Respawn Entertainment moved on to make a fucking live service game set in the Titanfall universe, by the way, but didn't make Titanfall 3. Fuck you, EA. You don't deserve Respawn Entertainment. I kind of lost track of what I was talking about. This was originally supposed to be a video about game demakes and modern retro style games. I guess I'll have to make that video later. I got a little lost in the sauce there. Whoops. The game industry is not dying. It is stronger than ever. The reality is that these behemoth publishers are losing money, but that money is not disappearing from the industry. It's being spread out among the developers and publishers that deserve it. Rarely do you actually get a memorable experience from a AAA game these days. There are some exceptions, but most are just spawned from corporate cynicism. You reap what you sow. So when you force a game to be live service when it has no reason to be just because Fortnite is so lucrative, you deserve to fail. The sad part is that many of these games have a chance to be really cool, and I'm sure the developers have a lot of passion for what they do. But these producers and publishers that don't understand anything about the art form that they're funding have to let their greed take over. There's a possibility of a video game industry stock crash, but that's only going to affect the giant publishers, which actually could be a good thing for smaller developers and the art form as a whole. The bad side of something like that happening is talented developers and artists will lose their jobs, but that's the reality of working for a shitty company anyway. There's so many amazing games out there that no one has heard of. Or maybe you have. If there's an obscure game that you want to share, let me know. I'm always looking for hidden gems. I made that Games That Need More Love video, and I want to make another. So hit me up in the comments or join the Discord where I have a channel dedicated to game suggestions. A corpo stooge may see the stocks of these mega companies and think the industry is fucked. But as for the people who actually understand and care about it, we're sitting back, popping champagne, and having a laugh. Peace.